When Nancy Pelosi walked right into that Judiciary Committee hearing, she firmly expected to easily take down Senator John Kennedy, seeing him as a country caricature who confused federal oversight with a rural crawfish boil. But she left that room laid bare, taken apart step by step, in front of a live audience of 6 million people. For nearly 39 years, the former speaker used her sharp, piercing tone to cut down men who dared challenge her rule, treating her voice like a political scalpel. But on this specific afternoon, her trademark talking down hit the wrong target. She quickly wrote off the senior statesman from Louisiana as a fool, brushing past his real background as a Vanderbilt honors graduate, an Oxford scholar, a Virginia law alumni, and a veteran who held state office for 5 terms. Facing her public insult, the seasoned lawmaker did not blink. He just gave a quiet, measured chuckle. With slow patience, he pulled out a handkerchief and started cleaning his glasses. When he finished, he dropped a single, crushing sentence, a line built to stick in the minds of those 6 million viewers, much longer than any law she backed during her 39 years in public office. The second the room broke into loud laughter, the mood shifted for good, the crowd, and soon the former speaker herself figured out his folksy style was not a punchline, but a set trap. In that split second, the crawfish boil turned into a cold courtroom, and the most powerful woman in Washington suddenly sat right in the defendant's chair. She mistakenly thought she was dealing with a quaint, harmless Southern relic. In truth, she was facing a highly trained, top-tier trial lawyer who used a regional drawl to disarm his targets. The wide gap between her low opinion of the man and the hard reality of his mind was pinned down by a gap of $649 million. This math problem was a financial hole she could never logically explain to the American public. As the clock put the hearing at just 11 minutes in, the veteran politician still believed she had total control. She spent 39 years ruling identical rooms, forcing them to match her strict will. Her record was forged in the fire of hard partisan warfare, managing split Democratic groups, whipping the votes needed to push the Affordable Care Act through a hostile Congress, staring down 4 different presidents, and tearing a State of the Union address in half on live television. That one act of televised pushback was quickly turned into a digital fundraising machine, pulling in $8 million in campaign cash within just 48 hours. Women of her rank did not just enter legislative chambers, they owned them. This specific Judiciary Committee room, called to debate congressional stock trading reform and filled with senators she consistently outlasted, outplayed, and outfunded for 4 decades, belonged to her long before she sat down at the witness table. Her opening statement was a 6-minute masterclass in classic political theater. The delivery was exact, polished, and putting out the quiet anger of a historic figure who truly believes her lawmaking record is bulletproof and hates being called to defend it. She proudly stated her firm support for institutional change, claiming she always pushed for ethical lines. She took credit for creating the original Stock Act. She also pointed to the Pelosi Act, a name tag she did not pick or manage to kill, which was moving through the congressional pipeline right now with her clear backing. Throwing off a vibe of clear openness, she stated she had nothing to hide, pointing out she chose to sit before the committee on her own. She basically dared any lawmaker in the room to question her honor. Then the floor went to the junior senator from Louisiana. He sat 4 seats down the platform, placed behind a plain nameplate showing his home state, wearing glasses that looked a bit too big for his face, and a necktie hanging a bit too loose on his collar. He showed the exact look he always built, a man who looked like he wandered off a fishing boat, stumbling into a high-level government meeting without a clear grasp of which committee he was talking to. The seasoned player at the witness table should have known better. Having worked the tough angles of the Capitol for decades, she had the background needed to spot the act. The folksy drawl, the heavy squint showing fake confusion, the spoken questions built to sound like they came from a front porch while hitting with the hard weight of a federal charge, these were classic signs of hidden skill. She knew in her head he was not a fool, yet seeing brains and giving respect are two very different things. Throughout her career, she always held back respect from anyone who on purpose showed a look weaker than their real skill. In her strict ranking system, true power was meant to be shown off. In his game plan, power worked best when kept out of sight. She made her main unforced mistake before the Louisianan even spoke his first word. As the committee head officially called on the senator, the witness leaned right into her microphone, not just to talk, but to make sure her heavy sigh was turned up and heard by every person in the room. With thick condescension, she told the room she hoped the gentleman from Louisiana had a line of questions that did not look like a county fair game, quickly reminding him they were sitting inside the United States Senate, not hanging out at a local crawfish boil. The resulting laughs that rolled through the room were not the warm, shared fun of peers enjoying a joke. It was the hard, cynical laughing of a system happily watching a top boss publicly cut down an equal and walk away without a scratch. She had been pulling this kind of verbal dominance and dodging the fallout for 39 years. The questioner just smiled. It was the slow, wide bayou smile of a seasoned hunter who just got handed the exact bullets he needed. He slowly took off his big glasses, pulled a pocket square from his chest pocket, and started wiping the glass with slow, planned focus. It was the timed, physical pace of a man taking control, making every person in the room wait on his clock before the drop started. Putting his glasses back on, he politely said thanks for the county fair invite, leaning right into the insult. He admitted a real liking for those events, bringing up funnel cakes, ring tosses, and the old game where people guessed the weight of a pig. After a timed break, the glasses went back on. He turned the story, explaining that at those local fairs, the act of getting fleeced is locally called getting took. He painted a clear picture of a guy walking into a tent with $100, walking out with nothing but a cheap teddy bear, and having zero clue how his wallet got emptied. Locking his eyes on the witness, he pointed out that in her specific case, the setup was totally flipped. He pointed out that her household first stepped into the political ring with a baseline $610,000, yet somehow walked out holding an eye-popping $649 million. He dryly noted that nobody seemed to get how that unheard-of pile of cash piled up either. The crowd did not just laugh, it blew up. It was not the polite chuckle of a stiff hearing, but the loud blast of a room watching a man take a planned insult and fire it back with hard compound interest. In the quick 3 seconds of noise before the room could settle down, the senator opened a beat-up manila folder. It was the exact same plain folder he took to every hearing, one that cleverly looked like it held grocery lists, yet never did. He started to read the record. He did not lean on a sleek laptop. He did not use digital screens. He held analog paper, printed pages holding handwritten margin notes, and sticky tabs placed with the dead-on focus of a digger who knows exactly which page holds the exact number needed to end a career. The folder was a loud analog object in a strictly digital room, and that clash was the whole point. A laptop just says standard prep, a beat-up manila folder points to a deep bank of institutional memory that goes way back past the current political news cycle. Keeping his humble act, he admitted he lacked the financial know-how of her spouse. He claimed no deep skill in trading complex options on NVIDIA, nor did he have the vision to buy Tempest AI right before its price tripled. He called himself a simple country lawyer. But he pointed out his basic skill to read the filing rules forced by the Stock Act. He made it clear his question looked not at the base trades, but strictly at the calendar dates of the paperwork. He read the written rule the law asks for public filing of deals within 45 days. He carefully reminded the room that the Congresswoman herself cast a vote to pass that exact 45-day legal mark, putting his finger right on the page, copying the slow move of a hard teacher pointing a student to the right book passage. He read the timeline of her husband's moves. A visa trade made on July 1st, 2024, was put on paper 67 days later. Stacked against the 45-day rule, the paperwork was 22 days late. High-paying NVIDIA options cashed in during November 2023 went on the books 52 days after the fact, missing the law's cutoff by 7 days. Tempest AI moves pulled in January 2025 showed up on the sheet 89 days later, dragging a full 44 days behind the written rule. Looking up from the analog proof, he told the room about a personal contact named Earl Thibodeau. Earl was painted as a 63-year-old pipe fitter from Baton Rouge who had been fixing plumbing pipes since he was 25. This working-class guy managed to scrape together a retirement fund of $180,000 inside a 401k account, stacked heavy in standard blue-chip stocks like Visa, running on the safe advice of his money guy at Edward Jones. The senator talked about a given year when Earl filed his yearly tax return just 3 days past the cutoff. For this small slip, the federal tax office hit him with a fine of $340. Earl paid the fee without a fight because folks like Earl stick to the rules, and they surely lack the cash to hire a team of corporate lawyers to fight federal fines. The side-by-side look was stark and cold. The witness's spouse filed required papers 89 days late on a deal that made millions in profit. Earl filed 3 days late on a form carrying a debt of a few $100s. The plumber took an instant financial hit. The political insiders took zero blowback. The questioner demanded to know exactly who the law was built to manage working-class people like Earl or the protected inner ring of the ruling class. The witness grabbed for her microphone right away. Her gut reaction was fast, step by step, and highly checked, showing the hard-wired reflexes of a veteran player who had run floor debates and committee hearings for 4 decades. She tried to hide behind office rules, stating that her staff met all filing needs in line with normal steps. The questioner cut the defense off mid-sentence, using simple math to point out that 67 does not equal 45. He leaned into his local roots, pointing out that even though he went to public schools in Louisiana, he knew how to subtract. He then laid out the harsh hits listed in Section 105 of the law, which states that a knowing break carries a top financial fee of $50,000 and up to 1 year in federal lockup per single slip. He ran the numbers. 3 late papers inside a 2-year frame equaled 3 possible federal breaks. That worked out to a on-paper max of $150,000 in fees and 3 years of jail time. Yet the real world was totally split for Earl. A 3-day lag cost $340 for the top-tier household. An 89-day lag on a huge stock payout brought 0 fines, 0 warning letters, and 0 official pushback. He cleaned his glasses for the second time. This repeating physical move was fast turning into a mental clock. The senator's speaking rhythm took a sharp turn. The thick, folksy drawl started to fade, not going away completely, but splitting like thick brush, showing the hard road underneath. What came out of the planned front was the sharp, hard voice of a man who learned legal theory at Virginia Law School and Oxford University, a man who knew exactly how to build a sentence that worked as both a polite question and a hard criminal claim. He pointed out her office kept a standard, heavily tested script for these questions. He said he knew the statement by heart due to its constant use, comparing it to reading from a Bible. He read the defense word for word. The speaker does not own any stocks and keeps no past knowledge or later hand in any financial moves. He gave up the technical truth of the claim. He agreed that her husband Paul held the assets through his own private firm, Financial Leasing Services Incorporated. It was his named account, carrying his exact name. She strictly owned nothing. He owned everything. Another long, hard pause came next. The glasses came off. The handkerchief returned. Wrapping the question in a code of real interest rather than direct disrespect, he asked a question that would lock down the hearing. Does one need to legally own the cow in order to drink the milk? The room blew up once more. The picture was dressed in farm visuals, but the base logic was straight, raw securities law, and every pro in the room caught the double meaning at the same time. The farm animals stood for the huge investment fund. The dairy stood for the $649 million of built-up cash they both lived on. This question, smartly dressed up as a country joke about dairy farming, was the exact rule used by federal enforcement lawyers in every single spousal benefit insider trading case. The main legal test asks whether the non-trading partner gets real upside from the big trades. The witness's jaw clearly locked. The fast facial flinch lasted barely half a second, showing the exact tightening of a veteran player who just watched her complex legal shield boxed up and broken down by a farm animal joke, leaving her stuck between taking offense at the visual or fearing its deadly truth. He nonstop listed the real perks of the setup. He called out that she lived in a high-end house priced at $25 million, a property paid for by market wins. She ate her night meals at a table bought with those same capital gains. He brought up low-end guesses showing her husband's fund had jumped by over 180% since she took federal office. During that exact same time window, the wider market tracker returned right around 100%, falling way behind. Her partner had found a way to reliably beat every top-tier money manager in the country who did not have the clear edge of sharing a bed with the person in charge of setting the lawmaking schedule on the House floor. He broke down her shield, saying that while she may not hold paper rights to the stocks, she clearly owned the high-end life those stocks paid for. He dug deep into the main legal trap, the exact problem the law was written to fight, asking whether a person who directly cashes in on big trades should be handled differently under the law than the person making them. He pointed out that in almost every other area of law, the receiver and the actor are looked at as one guilty unit. It is only inside the closed-off halls of Congress that lawmakers act like a firewall is there. Turning to the back of his analog file, he found a tab marked with a red sticky flag. It was the only red marker in a sea of yellow ones. This color choice, much like every other piece of his show, looked like a mistake, but was clearly on purpose, using doubt as a mental weapon. He moved the focus from the trades themselves to the spot-on timing of the deals. He jokingly clapped for the fund's amazing skill for seeing market changes before the wider public found out. While some watchers might call this steady vision financial genius, he threw out another country comparison. He said that when his chickens in Louisiana sense a storm before the pro-weather guys put out the news, he does not figure the bird holds high-level degrees in weather patterns. He figures someone fed the bird the tip. The crowd laughed, but the fun was clearly shorter in length. The people in the room were fast catching the beat of the questioning. The set pattern showed that the joke worked as the setup acted as the trap, and the trap was always packed with hard, real-world data. The trap slammed shut with dates and numbers. On July 1st, 2024, the spouse sold off 2,000 shares of the financial giant Visa, a deal priced between $500,000 and $1 million. Exactly 85 days later, on September 24th, federal lawyers launched a huge anti-monopoly lawsuit against the company, making the stock price tank. In December 2022, the spouse dumped 30,000 shares of a major tech giant. Barely 1 month later, in January 2023, the Justice Department kicked off anti-monopoly legal action against that exact company. In January 2025, high-paying options for Tempest AI were bought. Inside a 30-day window, the asset's price blew up from $35 to $89, showing a massive gain of 154% in a single month. He tied the data back to the working class. Earl Thibito held shares in the financial giant inside his retirement account. On the day the federal lawsuit hit the news, the plumber lost $2,800. For a working-class family, that cash stands for holiday gifts for grandkids or the must-have funds needed to fix a leaking roof. The top-tier insider had safely cashed out of the market 85 days before the pipe fitter took the financial hit. Earl lacked this inside track because Earl does not share night meals with the former boss of the legislative branch. Pulling from hard research, the senator pointed to a deep study run by a top-level economic research group, making sure to note it was not a partisan media desk or a political action squad. The numbers showed that congressional bosses regularly beat their market peers by an unbelievable spread of up to 47%. He stated flat out that a 47% edge does not come from gut feeling, it does not come from blind luck, it comes straight from protected info. The ground-level question staring at the committee was finding out the source of that tip. He boiled the complex legal web down to a single, hard question, demanding to know who slipped the tip to the figurative chicken. The question hung heavy in the air of the room. 5 simple words, pitched with a local accent, wrapped in farm pictures, yet holding the exact legal weight of the baseline question every federal enforcement lawyer drops when hunting for a source of material, non-public info during an inside trading probe. He smoothly turned tough federal laws into a viral soundbite. Every working pro in the room right away got the two-sided nature of the strike. The witness would not answer the meat of the charge. She reached for a rules-based lifeline, officially calling out to the chairman and blaming the questioner of pushing groundless guessing, backed by zero factual proof. He right away blocked the call, making it clear that asking for the source of the tip is a straight question, not a guessed-at theory. He called out the fund in question had cranked out $649 million, pushing the point that somebody had to ask the hard questions. Turning to the last part marked by the red flag, he showed that the money talk was wrapping up, clearing the road for something far worse. He swung from the stock fund to look at the spouse's outside acts, making the case they mattered a lot in proving whether the top-tier household lived under the same legal rules as everyday people like Earl. He dropped the 2022 driving under the influence crash into the record. The spouse had been running a high-end sports car in Napa County, ending in a crash with another car that left the other driver hurt. Blood alcohol tests clocked in at 0.082, a number past the legal line. The top insider pleaded guilty to a basic misdemeanor, getting a slap on the wrist sentence of 5 days of lockup that was finally handled as community service, tagged with 3 years of normal probation. He then pointed to a much newer event just 13 days back on July 3rd, 2026. The spouse was linked to fleeing a crash scene incident. While stating the case stayed open and moving, the trail of acts was impossible to deny. He stopped, wiping his glass lenses for the 3rd time, a physical show of the running clock. He told the witness his goal was not to trigger personal shame, but instead to look hard at her current legacy, build the putting up of a $50 million center built for representative democracy at a top-tier school. This school project set out to teach students about congressional steps, democratic rule, and ethical lines. Dropping all fake Southern manners, he landed his final point. He summed up the glaring double standard of the setup. She was asking for $50 million to build an ethics hub while her husband held a criminal driving rap, stayed under open review for running from a crash scene, and ran a stock fund that oddly beat every pro-hedge fund in the nation. In the face of this pile of heat, she claimed blind ignorance, yet let the academic site keep her name. He pointed out that in his home state, that kind of act is known as straight-up nerve. While Washington players might spin it as legacy building, he flatly stated that the monument she was putting up and the real record she was leaving behind were totally mixed up builds. He called it that sooner or later, a curious student would walk into her ethics center, look at the late financial papers, and ask the exact same question about the source of the inside market tip. The veteran politician fired back. She shot back because her whole run was built on the rule of never leaving a hit unmatched. She did not hit her historic rank by sitting still while men in loose collars read charges from paper files. As the strongest female player in the history of American rule, she refused to let a junior rep boil down her decades of work to a chicken joke. She wrote off his set as just afternoon show business, firmly telling the committee that staged acts do not count as real proof. She heavily backed her household's money, calling them fully shown, totally legal, and crystal clear. She hammered that every deal was public record and every needed paper was open for checking. If the questioner held hard proof of dirty work rather than leaning on farm metaphors and carnival nods, she dared him to hand the file to the right federal offices. Until that proof showed up, she on her own called the line of questions done. It was a slick, checked block, pushed with the heavy weight of a boss who had easily stalled probes for 40 years and had zero plan to change her game. Her party backers in the room let out a group sigh of relief, while her press team right away started cutting the video for online pushing. The questioner just nodded. It was the slow, plodding nod of a game planner who just pulled the exact pushback he expected and was fully ready to show why that very defense was broken at the studs. Grabbing onto her claim of total open books, he threw out a final math test. He called for a straight answer to a single math problem. He laid out the timeline her household walked into federal jobs in 1987, showing assets marked between $610,000 and $785,000, pulling from her first public sheet. Right now, her guess net worth sat at a sky-high $649 million, adding up her total government pay over 39 years at a rich $8.7 million. He ran the subtraction for the room. Taking $8.7 million from $649 million leaves a blank gap of $640.3 million. He did not yell the question. He did not look for claps. He pushed the question with the cold focus of a veteran trial lawyer backing a witness into a corner with a fact they cannot fight, holding the bottomless patience of a man working in a courtroom that never shuts its doors. He boxed the blank $640 million as the final test of truth. If she could spell out the source of that cash, she would pass. If she could not, the meaning was clear. He let the half-done sentence hang in the quiet room like an open charge waiting on a pen stroke that would never come. The hard truth was impossible to duck. The only sane answers for the fast wealth were either crazy rich market moves, which straight up tripped the spousal benefit legal wire and turned the loophole into a signed confession, or a claim of total blindness. Admitting the former Speaker of the House held zero grasp on the source of hundreds of millions of dollars was not an open book. It was either hard neglect or a planned act. Both excuses, he pointed out, belonged at the local fair. The witness gave no pushback. For the first time during the hearing, and marking one of the rarest beats in her 39 years of public rule, the iron-willed lawmaker sat in dead silence. It was not a game plan pause to build an answer. It was the stuck quiet of a boxed-in official handed a math reality that could not be solved without self-damage. The questioner closed his analog file, tucked his pocket square away, and fixed his necktie. These small, everyday moves flagged the end of a professional teardown. He politely thanked the witness, gave up the rest of his time, and tossed out a final, joking sorry for the country nods, pointing out that at a local carnival, folks at least get exactly what they are paying for. The fallout of the showdown played out fast over the next 72 hours. Anyone thinking the veteran politician walked away from the back and forth was looking past the digital wreckage. 3 separate video clips washed over the internet, hitting different groups and dealing heavy brand damage. The first clip, showing the dairy joke, pulled in 23 million views. Its viral win grew from mixing humor with tight legal theory. Legal pros pushed the footage far and wide because the question stood for the exact frame federal watchdogs use to pin blame on non-trading spouses in inside trading cases. The questioner had perfectly packed deep securities law into a 5-word farm joke that both farmers and corporate lawyers got without a hitch. The second clip, shining a light on the chicken question, blew up with 19 million views. Within hours, the line morphed into a cultural meme, acting as the standard shorthand for congressional money hustle. It turned into the go-to comeback for every oddly timed market move. Gear and shirts flooded the market. A fresh social media page popped up, tracking every new lawmaking paper drop using chicken emojis, pulling an audience of over 2 million followers in a single week. The third clip, locking right onto the hard math, locked down 14 million views. This specific tape rolled heavy through financial webs and retirement boards, hitting hard with everyday folks running standard 401k accounts. These investors natively got the math wall of flipping $610,000 into $649 million without a line to inside tips. This cut banked strictly on cold, hard numbers and math, once run on live television by a man holding a paper file, cannot be walked back. During the first week of fallout, her press team dropped a short, 4-sentence defense, the tightest statement of her run since a past big deal television clash. The drop tried to write off the questioning as just a stage show, pushing that all sheets were filed by the book. Tellingly, the letter flat out ignored the missed due dates, dodged the spousal loophole trap, stepped around the massive cash gap, and gave no answer to the viral chicken question. In the Capitol's hard-nosed slang, calling real data a stage show is a quiet nod that the facts are totally dead on, just highly bad for business. At the same time, federal election watchdogs kicked off a formal look at the specific late filings brought up during the hearing. The lens was narrow but hot, zeroing in on whether the drags made up knowing breaks under Section 105, which packed heavy financial and legal hits. While not a full criminal hunt, it was the stepping stone needed for one. Riding the wave, another senator formally asked for a government checks and balances audit of lawmaking trade habits, putting her specific trades up as the main test case set to roll out within 90 days. By week 2, federal securities watchdogs pushed a planned memo. While ducking her name, the paper flatly stated that written filing rules stick to spousal assets, noting that figuring out if an official cashes in on a partner's trades is a fact-based issue tied to enforcement hits. Every money watcher in the country read the letter as the office straight up answering the viral dairy question. Locking in that paper, rights do not matter if the cash perks get shared. Boxed in by the nonstop coverage, her legal crew handed in a willingly fixed sheet, shifting dates and beefing up trade details covering 2023 to 2026. This move, pushed entirely by the heavy heat kicked up by the hearing rather than a written rule, worked as a tough walkback that her older claims of total open books were flat out wrong. By the third week, the money motor pushing her legacy schools stalled out, marking a quiet but hard form of system rot. Main backers paused checks adding up to $4.2 million, waiting for a wrap-up to the rolling money scandals. They called out brand risks, the exact jargon used by Wall Street banks when dumping bad assets from their sheets. When big check writers and money trackers use identical talk to back away, it stops being a take and turns into a flat-out death sentence. The car crash look-in stayed open and unsettled. While no hard charges had dropped, just the breathing life of the probe, stacked with the past wrap-up, the big money trades, the late paperwork, the legal backdoors, and the massive blank wealth built up a bad track record that no $50 million school check could ever wipe clean. It drew a picture of a top-tier family running inside a totally split legal world than everyday folks. It was a space where heavy rule breaks led to light community work, late federal papers set off zero blowback, and sky-high wealth pulling met zero checking, all while asking the public to pay for an ethics hub carrying their name. Meanwhile, the working-class pipe fitter stayed totally out of the spotlight, passed over by the press. He just ate his $2,800 market drop, paid his $340 government fine, and kept wondering why the ruling crowd gets a free pass while normal people take an instant hit. The core problem stuck around without a fix. Someone always passes the inside tip. Until a boss forces the hand under oath and drags the source of the news into the light, the working class will keep bleeding cash and paying fees while the political big dogs pile up family wealth. The Southern senator just went back to Louisiana. He did not look for a press victory lap. He went back to his land, falling back to the quiet life he likes, sitting tight for the next locked-in scandal to slide across his desk. He knows the top dogs cannot cap their grab. The half-done, tricky papers will keep bleeding into the public eye, and when they do, a man packing endless time, a pocket square, and a beat-up paper file will be sitting there ready to read them.